That's what we just talked about in the locker room. That's what fuels you. And I think that's the biggest thing about life. Is you're going to have times like this, and it's how you bounce back. And I think, all those guys in that locker room are going to use this as fuel. And I think, you'll go to war with those guys anytime, any day, anywhere. It's motivation to get back here and not have this feeling and have what they're feeling out there. It's going to hurt and sting for a while, but it's what you sign up for. So it's what you get.
It's Drake Maye in the aftermath of the loss in Super Bowl 60. It's all predictable. We've heard it all before. This is part of the process of grieving a loss, an abrupt end of the season, playing longer than anyone else, and having to turn it around and do it again. Just think, while the Patriots coaches are dealing with the failure to win Super Bowl 60, they're going to have to pack up their stuff in 2 weeks and go to Indy for the whole week and delve into the process of finding the next wave of draft picks. The train never stops. I remember, and it's been 22 years now, I had a trial that took a whole week. It didn't work out. Anybody that never lost a case in court, you never tried many, because it's the ultimate crapshoot. And if you're not losing cases, you're not trying cases. But it was a long case, and I sent an email to the other lawyer congratulating him. And I said, the best thing about this business and the worst thing about this business, there's absolutely no time to wallow in defeat, and there's no time to do a victory lap, because the next train is always on the tracks. And especially when you practice alone like I did, and you suspend everything else you have to do while you focus on one case, you got no choice but to keep going. You can't grieve a bad day. And this applies to the NFL. They can't sit around and, on the floor turning the light on and off. They got to get up and they got to go. They got no choice, because the 2026 season has begun. It already had begun for the other 30 teams. You're behind. You're behind the teams. You're 5 weeks behind the teams that didn't make the playoffs.
Right. I mean, the only team you're maybe not behind is the Las Vegas Raiders, right? Because they had to wait to hire their head coach until after the Super Bowl 60. So, it's one of those crazy things. I mean, and, it happens to us too, right? I mean, 2 weeks from yesterday, we're packing our stuff and going to Indianapolis. So it's one of those things where you have to get yourself off the mat. And especially if you're the coaching staff, you've got to take a day or two and then, hey, we're delving right into this thing, because we need to make sure we can get back to where we just were. And it's very, very difficult, especially with the length of the season now. And, I now think about Dan Campbell and, what he said after that NFC Championship game loss to the 49ers. This may have been our only shot. And it's even more difficult for quarterbacks who lose in the Super Bowl in their first one to then come back and win, right? Jalen Hurts is the only quarterback basically in recent memory, in my football consciousness, that's been able to do it. There's been, I think, 4, right? The others being John Elway with is one of them. Lynn Dawson is another. So it's not like we see quarterbacks lose in the Super Bowl and then come back and win it. Dan Marino, perfect example, right? I'm sure everybody in the 80s before I was born thought that Dan Marino would be able to make it back to another Super Bowl. He didn't. So it's very, very tough to be able to get yourself off the mat and then be able to go and then also be able to win. So the fact that, you're hurting right now, use it as fuel, but there are no guarantees in this. And that's why Drake Maye, you saw him in that clip, get emotional about this, because you really don't know when or if your next opportunity is going to come.
Marino got there in his second season and never got back. Drake Maye got there in his second season. Drake Maye, the youngest quarterback to get to a Super Bowl other than Dan Marino. Wait, was he younger than Marino? Or Marino's still younger? I can't remember.
I can't remember either off the top of my head.
I can't remember. Whatever it was, the answer to the trivia question was Dan Marino, who I never viewed as a young quarterback. He came in old. What was my other point? Damn, I had a really I had a really good point that just gone. It'll come back to me. Oh, wait. Oh, yes. Here's my point. Getting back there is harder than winning the game.
Yes.
That's what people don't realize. And 6 years ago, after the 49ers blew a 10-point lead with 7 minutes left to the Chiefs, and I understand that, it was one of these events where they got to show up and talk, and the coach has to talk, and what do you want for this year? And Kyle Shanahan said something along the lines of, I want to get back to the point where we're up 10 points with 7 minutes left in the Super Bowl. It's like, yeah, that's the hard part. The easy part is closing out the game with the or at least it should be. It's virtually impossible to get back to that point again. I mean, really, you've got 32 teams. They're all going to be gunning for you. I know the AFC is down a little bit this year, and what's your reward? Like, we're going to go back and get our asses kicked by the Seahawks again? Like, the NFC is the better conference now. Mm-hmm. The pendulum is swung. Look at the AFC. Look at the disarray the AFC is in. Bills' new head coach. Ravens' new head coach. Steelers' new head coach. Quarterback question there. Quarterback situation lingering in Baltimore. Ooh, Ravens fans get upset when I even breathe a word of that until they sign the extension. Quarterback situation potentially lingering in Baltimore. Patrick Mahomes with the knee issue. Are they going to get more out of Justin Herbert? Are the Broncos going to get better? What's going to happen there? There's just a lot of questions. C.J. Stroud and the Texans. The NFC feels like it's got the better team, so the Patriots could get back and the Patriots could have the same result. Here's Mike Vrabel on his message to the New England Patriots after they lost Super Bowl 60.
I reminded them that we're 307 days into what hopefully is a long, successful relationship and program, and that it's okay to be disappointed. We have to be disappointed and upset together, and like I always do, I tell them I'm appreciative of them. I'm thankful. I'm grateful that I get to coach them. And, we don't want to – part of our identity is not being a front runner. And so, again, just like every year somebody's going to lose this game, and we have to remember what it feels like and make sure that it's not repeated.
I mentioned at some point in the past 2 weeks that there used to be a much more – damning stigma that applied to the team that lost the Super Bowl. Like, you're a loser if you lose the Super Bowl, which is just stupid. We do need to revel in the fact, the Patriots should, that they got there. Hell, getting to the AFC Championship or the NFC Championship is a significant accomplishment. To be down to the final 4 teams out of 32, I think that we need to not view losses in those games as some sort of a massive failure. Now, I'm not making a participation trophy argument here, but there is something to be said to earning the right to participate in a conference championship game or a Super Bowl. So, yeah, the Patriots didn't win, but they were there. And there's 30 other teams that would have loved to have been there. Now, would 30 other teams love to have lost? I don't know. But they would have loved to have the chance. They'd love to have the chance. And that's just the way it goes. There's got to be a loser. And that doesn't make you a loser. And I'd like to think we've evolved past that viewpoint back in the 70s. And I don't know, maybe that was just the way the kids were, but I just had that vibe that if you – and now it didn't help that the Vikings lost 3 of them during the time that I was paying attention. They lost 1, thankfully, before I was paying attention. But I had to deal with that on Monday morning at school 3 different times, especially after a loss to the Steelers. So maybe I associate that more negatively than others do.
I think we just found some childhood trauma for Mike Florio, guys. Yeah. We gotta put him on the couch here and
but I will say this. The childhood trauma day after Vikings losing the Super Bowl, still not in the same universe as having to leave the Super Bowl for reasons unrelated to choice. But anyway, so let's celebrate the Patriots. That's not a fake clap, and that's not pandering. They got to the Super Bowl. They had a solid year. And somebody emailed me. during the game. Can you explain to me how Drake Maye finished second for the MVP after the way he's played the last few weeks? And I said, well, here's the explanation. They vote on MVP the day after the regular season ends, not after the playoffs end. Mm-hmm. Does that help you? Like, it's a regular season award.
Yes.
And the idea that Drake Maye losing the game invalidates the fact that and I voted for him first. I had to pick between one or the other. I voted for him first. And for me, it was as simple as this. And it comes down to a little thing here, a little thing there. Matthew Stafford had a chance to win that Thursday night game and nail down the 1 seed for the Rams, and he didn't. And Drake Maye did more with that team than we would have ever expected him to do. And Drake Maye got my MVP vote, and Matthew Stafford was second. And nothing that happens in the playoffs changes that. He got to the Super Bowl and Stafford didn't. Did Stafford play better against the Seahawks than Maye? Yes. How much of it was Maye's shoulder? I don't know. Would Stafford have thrived behind Will Campbell at left tackle? I don't know. But nothing that happens in the playoffs changes the regular season. So Maye had a solid year. They got to the Super Bowl, and they lost, and that's... Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.